Welcome back to Outside Views, and yes, I have to say it again, we need to talk, because during the Brexit time there was always the talk about taking back control, we will have a golden age, etc. And later on, when Labour came to power, everybody said, now all the problems of the time of the Conservative Party will be gone, the Labour government will bring the country back on tracks and everything will be much better. And now I suddenly read news here, and that sentence I have to read not to make any mistake here. Because according to the latest reports, Great Britain has the highest inflation rate of all G7 countries. In July, inflation in the UK rose to 3.8%. And that is quite a downer. First of all, it's once again an increase from the 3.6% in the month before, and it really is far away from all the major trading partners here. And just as a reminder, because everybody always does, yeah, but the EU. And so this time I, for once, will do a little bit of whataboutism, because I always get that from you. In the EU, in the Eurozone, the inflation is 2%. So right on target, because if you don't know about inflation, you don't want to have it on 0%. The target by the central banks usually is to have inflation at about 2%. And in the UK, it is 3.8. And in the United States, we all know why, it's 2.7%. So being on a level like 3.8 is not a global problem or whatever, which usually comes first as something people would say. This is a distinctly British problem with that inflation. It's not a global problem with a global crisis as we had it with the energy crisis. This is homemade. And this is homemade by the current governments. And the problem with inflation always is that inflation you feel directly in your pocket. I remember the time when we had the gas crisis because some idiot thought it was a good thing to attack another country. We all could feel it on our grocery shopping prices and what grocery shopping suddenly cost. And you don't want it there. And so I'm quite happy that here in the Eurozone it's back down to 2% where we want to have it. But I'm really worried about my friends in Britain. A few weeks ago, I had a lot of visitors from Britain here in my hometown again, friends of mine that were here, and they all have to deal with this inflation back home. And this is not something that just happens, because this is no coincidence or something. This is a direct consequence of choices that were made. And one of the things that led to this inflation, and nobody probably will really think about the direct connection here, but the end of free movement from the EU, and there we're back at the Tories, of course, but is one of the reasons for a higher inflation, because if there are less people available to do a job, then wages do rise. Of course, for the individual it's good that wages rise, but stable wages that are just rising within some borders is a fine thing for the economy and for the people. But wages that are rising much faster than usual, and that happens when you have a lack of people working in these jobs, that has a direct effect on the inflation. And the average wage growth of about 5%, so much above normal inflation, is one of the drivers of inflation as well. And of course, when we look at some problems here, it brings the Bank of England into a really difficult position here, because they recently cut interest rates. Here in the Eurozone, we got back where we are because first of the rising rates and then lowering the rates in the pace that was really sensible in that moment. And if inflation is rising again, there's really not much that the Bank of England will be able to do here, because they have to be extremely cautious. But that also means that borrowing for millions of people will stay expensive, or in the worst case will not even getting more expensive. And the government, and there we are now at the current government, is not helping at all, because there are new commercial taxes introduced by Starmer's government, and that's adding another layer of cost. And if a company is having costs, we're having costs from imported stuff from the EU now, because of all the red tape and everything that came after Brexit. And if you're adding internal extra costs on products, this is not helping for inflation. And so you have to think about, is this the right time to do that? Because you cannot bring prices down if costs go up. And the other point, of course, is not homemade. In the end, even if I always hear that the Brits got better away than the Europeans, Donald Trump's tariffs are raising inflation in the UK. So the big celebrated deal with the US is still nothing good. I mean, I think our chancellor about the EU deal said, "Oh, we got away with a black eye" or something. It's a proverb in German that means you haven't been hit as much as you could have been hit. Yeah, but this freedom still didn't help, because the USA still has hit them with tariffs. Not as much as others, but still. And also there's weak growth. We don't need to talk about the growth here in Germany at the moment. We know what happened with the government in the last 3 years, and the new government is only in charge for now, today when I'm filming this, 112 days. So we'll have to see how they will do. At the moment I'm not very satisfied, to be honest. But that's the problem with coalition governments. But I'm still a friend of proportional representation, even if that means that we sometimes have those difficult discussions. Nevertheless, the UK, the economy was growing now by 0.3%. That is not a level that will help you to fight inflation like this. And so you have weak growth and soaring inflation, and that leaves you in the worst of all worlds, because that combined means stagflation. And this is in a big part self-inflicted by the former government with everything regarding to Brexit, or governments, because we've seen a lot of prime ministers at the time, and now with the new government and their tax policies. So they really will need to find a way to get around that, because if inflation is hitting someone, it's usually hitting the poorest, because they cannot shop their groceries somewhere else. They have to shop their groceries, and they have to eat, and they have to heat, etc. And they don't have any evasive maneuvers they can use for that. There is no chance. So they will be the ones hit the hardest. And so I'm quite looking forward to some of your comments, what Starmer's government could do to counter this new rising inflation. And really curious about your answers, especially if you're from the UK. Let me know what you think they should do. But at the moment, with everything going on, I don't see a clear course out of that problem at the moment. But if you want to see another video right now, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.